You can't learn to write a good poem unless you read good poems, unless you learn to read deeper and see what the poems are doing. That's why a lot of the books I have written are books about reading poems.
Welcome here in Krakow on the Czesław Miłosz Festival.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you about a war, because I know that you are working on a novel about the Second World War.
Yeah.
And yesterday, during your lecture, you also talked about poor Christians' looks at ghetto.
Yeah.
Do you think that we have just one appropriate way of saying about tough history about war, or we can fictionalize it, or making these things with this subject?
I think we have to fictionalize it. We have to approach it in all the ways that are adequate to us and up to us. I mean, you know, the very first Western poem in literature is a war poem. It's the Homer's Iliad. Yeah. And, you know, Tolstoy in War and Peace, he talks about how you have no one perception of a war. Everybody is different. The novel I'm working on is set in the island of Crete, where I have lived a lot all my life during the German occupation. I am very occupied in the idea of different people's perception of it, the Cretans' perception, the little girl, the bombing of it, and so on. So I think there can be no one image of this terrible thing.
Only historic.
Yeah.
I know that you are traveling a lot. You said about the Greece, but
yes.
You are a very active person. You are traveling, singing, writing, of course.
Yeah.
And do you think that we should pass through something to write about it?
No. Seamus Heaney, who was a friend of Miłosz's, said, you have to be true to your imagination. So you don't have to have been to the place to write about it, but you have to be truthful to your imagination of it, and you have to be up to it. If you followed that line to its conclusion, you would say that no male writer could ever write from a point of view of a woman. Nobody could write from the point of view of a horse. So imagination is important too.
What with other cultures, because you are meeting a lot of other cultures, and what is the most important for you in this contact to other people? To
try and see things through other people's eyes, to listen to them, to listen to what they say and how they see things. And that's why also it's important to try and learn other languages. I know in Poland you're very good at it. Everybody learns English, and you have other languages on your borders, Lithuanian and Belarus and so on. I think in England we are really sort of cut off from other languages, and it shows now in our culture very much. You know, in the time of Queen Elizabeth I, it was Queen Elizabeth knew ancient Greek and Latin and Hebrew. In the Middle Ages, Latin must have been like HTML. It would have been like the internet. Everybody knew Latin, because that's how the different European languages communicated.
You wrote a book, I'm a Man, God, Sex and Rock and Roll,
yeah.
where you compare the rules of evolution to the rules of contemporary rock music world. And I have a question about feminism and evolution, how you see it.
Men and women are different, and we evolve differently. But I think it's really interesting how women singer-songwriters have taken on the genre which male boys in their sort of swagger and testosterone invented rock music out of blues, which was a song of not of the victim, but of people who were way down, and they created this voice of male anger and male pain, which then swept the world in rock music. So women rock musicians taking it on and trying to change it are rather similar to women poets, because we inherit the form of the sonnet. The sonnet was invented by men. You know, it was the love sonnet was a way of a man talking about his feelings about a girl. So how do women poets be aware of that, change it, reverse the gaze so that we can be a woman looking at a man rather than a man looking at a woman? All that. I mean, women have to take that awareness on in a different way, I think.
I have a question about teaching poetry, because you have a great experience in teaching, and it is possible, in your opinion, to learn writing a poetry or even reading poetry. Do you have any recipe for that?
To reading poetry, you need to learn to read deeper, to read more openly, to read more critically. I don't mean criticizing the poem, but criticizing watching your own things. How does this word to relate to that word? Oh, maybe there's another word that it goes through or something like that. When I start out with quite young people, maybe they're 17, 18, I give them exercises which are quite structured, because structure enables you, surprisingly, to be more free and to be more, to take more risks. If you're just writing, well, I went along the street and I did this and I did this and I felt this and I felt this and I hate my mother and all the rest of it like that, there's no form in that. That's just unmediated feeling. An unmediated feeling doesn't make a poem. So you have to learn to bring your feelings and use them, but also to discipline, to relate, to think what are the demands of the form.
So now here we have a structure, and here we have a wild nature, and I know that you're, for example, a patron of 21st century tiger. And what skills, attitudes, things can animals teach us, people, in our cultural world?
What skills can they teach us? Well, to be themselves.
It's very hard.
And well, animals are so different. And you know, a tiger, for instance, is a specialist. It's a prisoner of how it's evolved, because you know it's evolved to live in forests, so it has to look after its young, hide its young in a certain place. It's evolved to eat certain animals, which are only found in forests, and it's evolved to be very large, so it needs a lot of those. It needs, you know, 50 large deer-shaped animals a year. It's evolved to live alone, except when it's rearing its young. All those, and it's evolved to live in a very specialist climate. So all those things mean that its habitat is shrinking, whereas a pigeon has evolved to be very adaptable. So
we can see it in Krakow.
yes, you can see it in Krakow. I've seen many pigeons in Krakow. So animals are so different. There are the specialists like the tiger and the generalists like the pigeon. And this is a shrinking world, and human beings are making, you know, our planet so difficult for the other animals that the pigeon is going to win out of the tiger. You have to start further back in a way. Zoos are very important now places of arks for the preservation of wild animals. Lions, if we're going to talk about lions, they are threatened in the wild, not just by their habitat, but also by AIDS. There's a lot of AIDS in the lion population in the wild. So zoos are really, really important places for captive breeding, that is to preserve a healthy line of the species. So, and also the other thing about zoos, like the London Zoo, which I'm on the board of, is that they're funding the conservation in the wild. So London Zoo, for example, the Zoological Society of London, the people coming in to learn about the animals and see the animals actually funds all sorts of conservation projects in the wild, that monitors the wild population, that looks after protection against poaching, all sorts of things. I mean, I think the idea of killing the giraffe or cutting it up in public view is disgusting. Why do that? But it's an important thing that you have to do if you're going to maintain a healthy population globally of wild lions and a particular species, for instance, the Asian lion or a subspecies. So that's how it goes.
So I think the most important is our conscious and our thinking about these things before talking.
Certainly,
that's
yes.
a scandal and that's a bad thing.
Yes, yes. Well, knowledge. Knowledge is important.
Yeah.
Education is important.
Of course. So thank you for your time and
A great pleasure.
and for your visit, and that was great pleasure for us and for me.
Thank you.
And
Well,
I recommend your book because we can read your poems in Polish now.
Thank you.
First time. So
Well, I'm really entranced to be here in this museum, which I'd never heard about, and to understand that manga actually comes from Imari porcelain that was imported into Poland from Japan. It's extraordinary and it's a wonderful thing.
That's
Knowledge, again.
Thank you.
Thank you.